right now we're going to introduce you to the wonderful world of Brazil. Here's a big geode. Here's a little smaller one that I can hold up to the camera so you can see that color. But I've always told you that some of these mining trips are in very, very remote locations. And one of the things I wanted to cover first is just the logistics of getting there and what you need to know and what you need to do before you even step on the plane. It's not like, hey, let's go to Brazil today. Number one, it takes a lot of planning. So first of all, you want to have, obviously, before you make all of your travel arrangements and everything else, who's going to pick you up on the other end? Is there somebody that needs, do you need an interpreter? For example, when we go to Brazil, it's Brazilian Portuguese. Mine's not that good. Do you need an interpreter for that? How do you physically get there? Are there shots that have to be taken? So let me take you through what Judy and I did. This would have been about 8 years ago when we went to Brazil. So number one, of course, everybody knows you're going to need a passport. Because you're traveling outside the United States of America, you're going to need a passport. And not only do you need a passport, it has to be up to date. Because they don't allow you to, you've probably seen this on cruise ships too, they don't allow you to enter a country if there's less than 6 months remaining on your passport. I know it's weird, you're thinking, well, wait a minute, I got 6 more months to go. So you need to make sure that that's up to date. Number two, certain places where you are traveling, you're going to need what's known as a visa specific to that country. So Judy and I have one for Brazil, we had one for Australia, we had one for China. I mean, not just Hong Kong, but China proper. And when you do that, it costs you money to do that. It takes time to do that. So if you don't have that visa well in advance of your trip, you got to make sure that you get one. In this case, we actually had to expedite it and pay extra money because the trip kind of came up last minute for us in that case. Now, something else that you're going to need. This is actually from the World Health Organization and Centers for Disease Control. There's certain places that you travel that you need to kind of get some sort of vaccinations. I know this is just a small part of that, but I believe for the purposes of going to Brazil, I believe it was yellow fever. So you have to get those vaccinations. And again, you have to do that well in advance because you can't get it the same day that you go because those vaccinations have to be able to get into your system, your bodies. All right, so now let's assume that you've done all that. You have your trip planned, and it is amazing. A lot of people think this is so exciting, it's exotic, you get to go to all these places. But let me tell you the real deal. So you got to get to the airport, and these days, 2 hours or 3 hours before you're going to fly. So our first leg of the flight is from Tampa International Airport to Miami, because Tampa does not go direct to Rio de Janeiro. So we had Tampa to Miami, that's about an hour. And you're gonna get about a 2-hour layover while you're waiting for your international flight to Rio de Janeiro. So by the time you take that, it's usually at night. And then you're gonna take a between 8 and 9 hour flight between Miami and Rio de Janeiro. And that means you're gonna get there sometime, let's call it 9 or 10 in the morning. So you've added another 8 to 9 hours onto your 3 or 4 that you had with your layover in Miami. And then you get there, you clear your customs. Hopefully you're getting by because I don't have an interpreter at that point, but we got through that just fine. Now we have a 6 to 8 hour layover in an airport where we don't speak the language, and we're waiting for a flight that we're going to take from Rio de Janeiro to Sao Paulo. Because don't forget, Rio de Janeiro is a nice tourist destination. It has beaches, it has Corcovado, the concrete Christ, all of those things that we were going to see later on in our trip, but we needed to get to the mines first. So after that 6 to 8 hour layover, we get on a plane. It's another hour or so to get to Sao Paulo. Now, Sao Paulo is a huge city. I mean, it's like you're looking at the most crowded part of New York City times 2, and that's Sao Paulo. And then we have a little bit of a layover there. About another hour, we stop at a place called Florianopolis. And Florianopolis is a smaller airport, but it's really kind of a touristy place. It'll be where people it'll be like the equivalent of having a home or a condo in Florida when you live in Minnesota. So Florianopolis was a little place. They dropped a few people off. And then we had the last part, at least the flight leg, from Florianopolis to a smaller, I think, I want to call it was Passo Fundo. airport. And that's where we got picked up by our contact who owned the factory in a place called Guarana. And that's and if you think of Brazil, which is the 5th largest country in the world by area, in the very south part of that is called Rio Grande do Sul, which is in the south. This is the southernmost part of Brazil, and that's where the mining for amethyst is. So we get picked up there. We have about another hour there by vehicle, to get to the hotel where we're staying before we start our journey the next day. So long story short, you're around 25, 26, 27 hours all told, constant traveling, before you set anywhere near where you want to go the next day. So it's what's the best way to tell you? You have to have a lot of stamina if you're going to visit a mine. Okay, so now it's the next day, and we're going to go to the mines. So we end up setting foot in the mines, and the first thing we do, and Judy has the camera, and we're outside of this area that they call Amethyst do Sul. So Amethyst do Sul is amethyst from the south, and that is where most of the Brazilian amethyst mines are. And what the first thing that we recognize, and you're going to see this on the videotape I'm going to show you right now, it was unique in that this is the one area where they're mining. And if you take a look at all those little tailings, little brown spots in the green in the mountainside, that is all at about the same elevation. And what's below it is what they call the Swiss cheese highway that you're coming in on, because it literally, there's holes everywhere under the road. So they call that the Swiss cheese highway. One other thing that I did want to mention about going to the mines. I always say this, and it's really, really true. You learn something every single time you go to a mine, something that you thought you didn't know. The conventional wisdom, when you study all the books about gemstones and how they're treated, it will tell you that amethyst can be heat treated. And of course I thought that, and that's what I learned through the GIA and everything else, until I actually got to the mine. And you won't believe what I learned about whether amethyst is heated or not. Okay, so we saw the outside of the mine and where everything's at the same elevation. And now we're walking towards the entrance. And as you look at the entrance, you see this ventilation. So you see that ventilation up there? Well, the reason that you have that ventilation is because you're about to walk a quarter of a mile to a half a mile into a cave in the mountain. So you want to be able to breathe, and you don't want the air to get all stale in there. So we come to the moment of truth. Do you go forward? Are you going to go into the mine? Because it is not as easy as it might seem. There are certainly a lot of risks and dangers when you're going to enter the mine. But guess what? We've come this far. So let's all start heading into the mine. So as you enter the mine, and the temperature drops and it gets a little bit cooler, and we're all walking in towards, and of course you have your guides with you. And then you're going to get to, well, this is about the time where you see those signs that say danger. That sign you see there is written in Brazilian Portuguese, but it is saying danger. And it's right about this time that they start to tell us a story about how one of those other mines at that same elevation, about a week or two before we got there, had collapsed and people had died. Well, too far, we're in the midst of it right now. And then you start to see some of the promise, because I'm going to show you a little flashlight on a geode. I mean, that's absolutely gorgeous. It's pretty. And this is what you're looking for. And then we see where the mining operation is happening in earnest. And you're going to see maybe here, I don't know if I'll mute it for you or not, but they're taking a jackhammer to all of that rock that's in there. And what they're looking to do is they're trying to uncover a geode. And if they uncover that geode, here's where they're going to decide what to do with it. So we saw a geode that was exposed, and they drill a little bit of a hole in there, and they take a light at the end of a wire and they stick it inside. And what they're doing is they're peering inside to see what is the color of the material in that geode. If it is a beautiful, rich, dark purple, then they're going to cut that out by hand, and as many people as it takes to carry it, they're going to carry it out of the mine. If it's not great color, if it's a little bit pale, Well, they're not going to use that for amethyst. They're going to use that to heat it to change it into citrine. Remember I told you about we thought all the amethyst was heat treated? It's really not. Most of the amethyst you see is a completely natural color. You can actually irradiate citrine to create an amethyst, but you heat amethyst to create a citrine. So that's what they did. So what you're seeing now is they are packing, they drill these holes all around the geode because we don't want that one to be amethyst. So they're going to pack it with all this gunpowder, and that's what he's doing right now. You can see him filling and dropping the gunpowder into there. And then they're going to put some wires onto that, and we are going to walk 100 yards or so back towards the entrance of the mine because we don't want to be anywhere near where the explosion is going off. So you're going to see as the guy with the wire comes with us, and he's going to touch those contacts together, and you're going to, well, you may not hear it, but there is not just a big boom underneath that ground. You can feel the concussion in your chest, and that's why Judy, who is holding the camera, you see it shaking a little bit because you literally feel that concussion, and you're thinking, I hope we're not one of those mines that were collapsed upon like the one was 2 weeks ago. But we've gotten what we came for, so now you can see we're walking towards the entrance of the mine, so we're going to leave that mine, that amethyst mine, and the next step will be taking it to see where this amethyst gets processed to become jewelry or an ornamental piece of furniture.